My daughter thought her cruel Father's Day joke, a $2 lottery ticket, was hilarious until the numbers hit the $120 million jackpot. Now she wants half, forcing me to choose between funding her entitled lifestyle or teaching her a harsh lesson about stealing. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. Dad, here's your gift. If you win, remember half is mine. Valerie's voice, sharp and theatrical, sliced through the quiet Father's Day dinner as she tossed a crumpled lottery ticket across my dining table. It skidded on the white linen, stopping beside my coffee cup. I caught the paper, smoothing the cheap stock with my weathered fingers. $2. It was a joke, a prop in a scene she was already scripting. Very thoughtful, sweetheart, I managed, forcing a smile that felt like fractured glass. Oh, but wait, Valerie interrupted, her tone rising with that familiar performance-ready excitement. I haven't given Mitch his gift yet. She produced an elegant, heavy gift box from behind her chair. It was the kind of packaging that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. Mitch, her husband, straightened in his chair. His shirt was perfectly pressed, catching the afternoon sun streaming through my modest window. He wore the confidence of a man who had never had to worry about a utility bill. These, Valerie announced, lifting the tickets from their silk lining, cost $13,000. She looked at Mitch, then back at me, letting the pause hang heavy. Mitch deserves the best for everything he's done for our family. The weight of the crumpled ticket in my hand instantly felt microscopic. Mitch examined the cruise documents, his manicured fingers tracing the gold embossing. Now, this is what I call a proper gift, Valerie, he purred. His eyes met mine across the table, and he added, "Your father taught you well." The phrase hung in the air like smoke. My sister Brenda cleared her throat. My nephew Rick looked down, suddenly fascinated by the worn wood grain of the table. Dad always said, "Actions speak louder than words," Valerie replied, her laugh bright and sharp. She gestured vaguely at my ticket. Some people show love through grand gestures. Others. I held the paper steady, though my stomach churned. I appreciate the thought, Valerie, really. Oh, it's just a little joke, she dismissed, waving a hand. But seriously, if you hit the jackpot, I expect my cut. I paid for it after all. Mitch chuckled, a low, satisfied sound. Perhaps next year Stan will surprise us all with something more substantial. The tickets represented 2 weeks in the Mediterranean, first-class private balcony, memories I couldn't afford for myself, but were freely given to a man who had only entered her life 6 years ago. Mitch has always been there for us financially, Valerie continued, oblivious to the silence she created. He helped us buy our house, paid for Leo's private school, even covers our country club membership. He's earned something special. The crumpled paper felt like it might disintegrate in my grip. I remembered the years of double shifts at the garage, the nights I'd fallen asleep in my recliner too tired to move, all to afford her college tuition and those endless stacks of textbooks. Well, I hope you both enjoy the cruise, I said quietly. We will, Mitch confirmed, slipping the tickets back into their box with ceremonial care. This is how families should treat each other, with generosity and respect. The conversation moved on, but I stayed trapped in that moment, focusing on the cheap paper in my hand. $2. The same amount I used to give Valerie for an ice cream cone when she was 7. That tiny gesture had once lit up her entire face. Now, it was an insult. They left soon after, their expensive car engines fading into the evening air. The house settled into the familiar heavy quiet of my life alone. I stared at the family photos on the wall, the modest furniture, the careful decorations I'd set up for a Father's Day that had become a performance. The next morning, the small crumpled ticket lay beside my cold coffee cup. I was at my laptop running my ritual check of the monthly bank statement. 40 years of this. First as a young father counting pennies, now as a careful retiree protecting what little I had left. My finger traced down the list of expected transactions, utility bills, groceries, the modest dinner costs. Then I hit a line that made the blood drain from my face. Premium Travel Services, Inc. $13,000, I blinked, certain I had misread the numbers. The amount stared back at me, stark and unforgiving. My hands shook as I cross-referenced the date. 1 week ago. I had been nowhere near a travel agency. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Valerie still had authorized access to my account. I had set it up years ago after her mother passed, a safety net in case of emergency. I had forgotten about it completely. The phone felt heavy in my shaking hand as I dialed her number. Each ring echoed in the quiet kitchen, mixing with the sudden, frantic beat of my heart. "Hello, Dad." Her voice was that bored, polite drone she used when I interrupted her important life. "Valerie, I'm looking at my bank statement." I tried to keep my voice steady. "There's a charge for over $13,000 from premium travel services." A brief silence, then a light, dismissive laugh. "Oh, that. I bought Dad Mitch his cruise. He deserves something nice for once." The words struck me like a physical slap. You took $13,000 from my account without asking?" "I didn't take anything, Dad. I used family money for a family gift." Her tone hardened, defensive. "You wouldn't have spent it anyway. It's just sitting there." "Valerie, that's theft." My voice broke on the word. "You stole from me." "It's not stealing when it's family money," she snapped. "Mitch has always been there for us financially. He helped us when we needed it. This is just returning the favor." I gripped the phone, knuckles white. "I'm your father, Valerie. I raised you. I worked double shifts to put you through college." "And Mitch helped us both move beyond that." She cut me off. "He showed us what real success looks like, what it means to be generous, to live well, to give meaningful gifts instead of—" She paused, and I could hear her contemptuous sigh. "Instead of lottery tickets." The cruelty in her voice left me speechless. This was my daughter, the one who had called me her hero. "Dad, are you there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Look, you're overreacting. Mitch earned this. He's successful. He contributed. He deserves recognition." "And what about everything I've done?" Another pause. When she spoke again, the line was ice. "You did what fathers are supposed to do." "Mitch went above and beyond." The line went dead. The dial tone shrieked in my quiet kitchen like an alarm. I slowly set the phone down, my hands trembling. The same hands that had held her as a baby, had taught her to steer a bicycle, had fixed 1,000 transmissions. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was the HOA secretary. "Mr. Wallace, please remit the $85 fine for the unkempt state of your front hedge within 48 hours or face further penalties." Even the neighborhood bureaucracy seemed to smell the blood in the water. I walked to the kitchen trash can. The crumpled paper was already buried beneath coffee grounds and empty cans. The $2 joke bought with my own stolen money, the perfect irony. I plunged my hand into the mess, finding the paper. I smoothed it out on the counter. The numbers stared back at me. 714233542, Powerball 18. I memorized them, these digits that now represented my humiliation. I had intended to throw the ticket back, but my hand froze above the can. The house felt smaller, shabbier, tainted by her eyes. I needed air. I needed to move. I needed to escape the sound of my own silent grief. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, the flimsy ticket still clutched in my fist. I walked down Maple Street trying to outrun the betrayal. The memory of the numbers 714233542 seemed to burn into my mind. I couldn't shake the strange feeling that I had seen them somewhere else, somewhere official very recently. I stopped under a flickering street lamp, my heart knocking against my ribs. I knew where I'd seen them. I knew exactly where those numbers had been printed this week, but the memory was a blur, too big to be real. The memory hit me with the force of a hydraulic press, the televised local news drawing, the announcer's ceremonial voice, the numbers scrolling across the bottom of the screen. I had been half watching, numb to the world. I walked faster, my mind racing through 3 days of numbness and shame. I had been grieving the loss of my daughter, not watching the news. Yet, the sequence 714233542 and the Powerball 18 was now stamped on the inside of my eyelids. I turned and ran back home, my legs pumping hard against the asphalt. I barely noticed Mrs. Patterson watering her roses as I vaulted her low fence and cut across her lawn. I saw the flash of the television light still on in my living room window. I burst into the house, slamming the door shut behind me. I didn't bother turning on the lights. The muted blue glow of the television illuminated the kitchen. I snatched the crumpled ticket from the counter and smoothed it out one last time. The numbers were faded, stained with coffee, but still legible. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42. Powerball 18. I stumbled back to the recliner, sinking into the familiar worn fabric. The remote lay on the side table. I grabbed it, my thumb shaking as I searched for the local news channel. They were running a late-night rerun of the drawing. "Good evening, Capital City," the cheerful announcer repeated. "Welcome to tonight's Powerball drawing, where we have a rollover jackpot of $120 million. The number was so huge it felt meaningless. My anxiety was a physical weight on my chest. I watched the machine spin, the balls tumble, and one by one the numbers were called. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, and the Powerball is 18. The announcer held the pause for effect. I didn't need the pause. I knew. Every single number matched. The $2 joke that Valerie had tossed across the table, the paper I had recovered from the garbage, was worth $120 million. "Valerie," I whispered, the name tasting like ash, "if you win, remember half is mine." The irony was so perfect, so brutal, that I almost laughed until I remembered the source of the ticket money. She had bought the winning ticket with money she stole from me, and now she would claim half. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't operate the phone. I used the landline, dialing the automated lottery hotline. A mechanical voice confirmed the winning digits. The Powerball amount was indeed $120 million. I sat there, the crumpled paper the only thing holding me to the real world. My modest kitchen, the outdated appliances, the worn floor. It all felt like a backdrop. My world had just tilted on its axis. I was one of the wealthiest men in Capital City, and the first person who knew was the daughter who had just humiliated me and stolen $13,000. I barely slept. I kept the ticket tucked deep inside the worn leather wallet I'd carried since the 1980s. By morning, I was sure it was a mistake, some cruel, elaborate hallucination. The next day, I drove into downtown Capital City. The Ohio Lottery Commission offices were imposing, glass and steel reaching toward the gray clouds. The security guards looked like Secret Service agents. This was serious money, serious business. I was met by a lottery official named Sarah Kim. She was professional and measured. I laid the coffee-stained wrinkled ticket on her desk, the plastic sleeve rattling faintly. "This is quite a story, Mr. Wallace," she smiled politely. "Found it in your trash, you say?" "Threw it away in anger," I admitted. "My daughter bought it as a Father's Day gift, but the circumstances were complicated." Sarah nodded without judgment. "We see all kinds of situations here. The important thing is verification." She slid the ticket under a specialized scanner. The machine whirred for a moment. "Mr. Wallace," she announced, her voice losing a fraction of its professional detachment. "This is a confirmed winning ticket. Congratulations." I gripped the arms of the chair, feeling a dizzying mix of relief and terror. "However," Sarah continued, placing a stack of legal documents on the desk, "our verification process takes 48 hours for prizes of this magnitude. We need multiple security checks, anti-fraud procedures, and of course, we must prepare the legal payout documentation. We also need to discuss taxes, payment options, lump sum versus annuity, and public relations." I signed papers, provided identification, and chose the lump sum payout, barely processing the cascade of information. 48 hours. 2 full days where the ticket was out of my control, and Valerie was still in the dark, still believing I was the miserable old man she could push around. The drive home passed in a blur. I was worth $120 million. And I had given myself a 2-day head start. I pulled into my driveway, the engine ticking as it cooled. I was home less than an hour when a familiar black SUV with tinted windows screeched into my driveway. I hadn't even had time to take off my good coat. The front door burst open. Valerie stood in the frame, her face flushed with excitement and desperation. "Dad, I heard about the lottery." She practically vibrated with energy. "Some woman at Mitch's office knows someone who works at the commission. She saw your name on the preliminary winners list." She didn't even notice the lottery paperwork I'd left spread on the kitchen table. Her eyes were wide, focused only on the glittering prize. I remained seated. "Hello, Valerie." "Don't hello me. Do you realize what this means? We're millionaires. Remember what I said? Half is mine." I looked down at the official documents, confirming my future wealth. The sound of her voice demanding what she hadn't earned, demanding what she had stolen the money to buy, felt like an icy wave. "That was a gift, Valerie," I said, my voice calmer than I thought possible. "You can't take back a gift." Her excitement collapsed into a hard, cold fury. "We had an agreement. Everyone at that dinner heard me say it. Witnesses, Dad. Legal witnesses." I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You threw that ticket at me like garbage. You bought it with money you stole from my account. It was never about sharing anything." "Stole?" Her voice pitched higher, a desperate, childish sound. "I used family money for a family purpose, and now you're trying to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine." I looked at the stranger in my kitchen. The little girl was truly gone. In her place was a hungry, entitled woman. "The ticket was a gift," I repeated, finality ringing in the words. "Whatever your intentions, whatever you said, it became mine the moment you gave it to me. And now, it is verified." She slammed her hand on the table, making the lottery papers jump. "I'll sue you. I'll prove that ticket belongs to me. I'll take you to court and make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." "And what kind of man am I, Valerie?" I asked. For a brief, painful second, the mask slipped. I saw a flash of fear, or perhaps shame, in her eyes. But it vanished instantly, replaced by absolute, determined contempt. "The kind who steals from his own daughter," she spat. The doorbell rang 3 times, insistent and loud. I froze, glancing at Valerie. She was too enraged to notice. The ringing was a life raft I wasn't allowed to reach. The war started before sunrise. I woke to the insistent, panicked buzzing of my phone. 15 missed calls, 12 texts, a cascade of social media notifications that made my chest tighten before my eyes were even open. The first Facebook post was timestamped 6:47 a.m., just as the neighborhood was waking up. Urgent. "My father has stolen my lottery ticket and is claiming the entire jackpot for himself. This is the same man who cut off my access to family money and publicly humiliated me. The ticket was my gift, with the clear understanding that winnings would be shared. This is elder abuse in reverse." When elderly people become so obsessed with money, they'll cheat their own children. Please share this post. I need people to know the truth about what's happening. Attached was a photo of me from last Christmas, looking tired and slightly stern in a sweater Valerie had insisted I wear. Below it, the comments were piling up like digital debris. "OMG, Valerie, I'm so sorry. Older people can become so paranoid about money. Your father should be grateful." But Valerie hadn't stopped at Facebook. Her Instagram featured a tearful video shot in her car. Her mascara was carefully smudged, her voice breaking just enough. "I don't usually air family business like this, but I'm desperate. My own father has stolen my lottery ticket, literally stolen it, and now he's claiming the entire $120 million for himself. I bought that ticket as a Father's Day gift." I jokingly said, "Half is mine. Because that's what you do with family, right? You share." But apparently, my father heard that as a legal challenge instead of a daughter's love. Mitch had coordinated his own campaign across LinkedIn and Facebook, his posts carrying the manufactured weight of professional credibility. Witnessing financial elder abuse is devastating, but reverse elder abuse is equally damaging to families. When elderly individuals become obsessed with money to the point of betraying their children's trust and generosity, we all lose. My wife is heartbroken by her father's greed. The lottery ticket was purchased as a gift with clear verbal agreements about sharing. Yet, he claims exclusive ownership. This behavior destroys families and communities. Their shared social circle, people I'd known for years, publicly supported Valerie's version of events. My phone rang again. It was Brenda, my sister. "Stan, what in God's name is happening? My neighbor just called asking if you really stole Valerie's lottery ticket." "Social media is going crazy." I explained the situation again, the shame of having to detail the betrayal to my own family member. "Yes, Valerie bought the ticket. Yes, she made jokes about sharing. Yes, I won. No, I don't owe her anything. She bought it with the $13,000 she stole from me." "But Stan," Brenda said gently, "she did buy it for you. The optics are terrible." "Optics," I repeated bitterly. "She created the optics by stealing from me and then turning me into the villain." By noon, the story was a wildfire in our local corner of the internet. Local neighborhood forums buzzed with arguments about family loyalty and moral responsibilities. The community app next door was filled with heated discussions about the greedy lottery winner on Maple Street. I made the mistake of reading the comments on Valerie's posts. "This is disgusting. How can a father do this to his daughter? Lawyers need to get involved. This is theft, plain and simple. Team Valerie." No way should an old man keep money that belongs to his daughter. Mitch's professional network mobilized. Colleagues from his investment firm shared his posts, adding serious commentary about ethics. I closed my laptop and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the neighborhood I'd called home for 30 years. 3 neighbors stood near my mailbox, clearly discussing the situation. When they saw me at the window, they scattered like guilty children. I was worth $120 million, and my reputation was being shredded by the very daughter who had committed the actual theft. My landline, the one Valerie didn't know about, rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I let it go to voicemail. "Mr. Wallace, this is the Capital City Dispatch. We are running a story on the family dispute over the Powerball prize. Please call us back for comment. We are on deadline." The house felt contaminated. I needed to move. I needed a counter move, and fast. I found a local legal aid referral service online and called the first name on the list, Sandra Ortiz. She specialized in elder financial security. I compressed the whole mess into 2 minutes. The cruise theft, the lottery win, the social media assassination. "The key is intent, Mr. Wallace." Sandra's voice was crisp and professional. "Did she give you the ticket unconditionally? Did she give up possession? Anything she said after the presentation, including the joke about splitting, is secondary. However, if she sues, we face the expense of a long public battle. She's winning the PR war right now." I signed the retainer agreement electronically. Sandra's fee schedule felt daunting, but I reminded myself I had $120 million waiting to be claimed. "I need to claim the money publicly," I told Sandra, "and I need a defense that hits harder than a social media post." "We file the claim tomorrow. You must present the ticket in person to the commission, Mr. Wallace. That will trigger the final payout timeline, and it will trigger the legal action from your daughter. Once that happens, we have a public stage." I printed out Valerie's most vicious social media posts, laying them on the table next to the official lottery claim forms. I stared at the photo of me looking stern in my sweater. My landline rang again. I hesitated. It was the same unfamiliar number as before. I answered this time. "Mr. Wallace, this is William Johnson." The voice was measured, professional. "I believe we need to talk." I gripped the receiver. "I'm Stan Wallace. I don't know a William Johnson." "Yes, you do. I am Mitch's father, and I was at your Father's Day dinner. I believe I witnessed the entire exchange." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mitch's father. Mitch's real father, the corporate executive. "I witnessed everything, Mr. Wallace," Bill repeated. "The way your daughter tossed you that ticket, the way Mitch boasted about the $13,000 gift." I saw the look that passed between them. It was cruel. "Why are you calling me?" I asked, suspicion tightening my jaw. "You're family." "I'm family by marriage, Mr. Wallace, and a man of business. What my son and daughter-in-law are doing is unconscionable. They are destroying your reputation with lies. I want to set the record straight." He proposed meeting at Murphy's Diner, a modest place where I often ate breakfast. He named the time. 1 hour. My lawyer had just told me I was losing the PR war, and now the father of my daughter's husband was offering to be my public witness. This was a turn I hadn't prepared for. I hung up the phone and looked down at Valerie's printed lies. I had been ready to fight a lone, painful battle against my own daughter. Now, a new leverage point had opened, one I never saw coming. Murphy's Diner sat on a corner lot, perpetually smelling of frying bacon and strong coffee. It had red vinyl booths and checkered linoleum, a blue-collar institution. Bernard Sutton, or Bill, as he introduced himself, was unmistakable. His tailored navy suit stood out like a beacon among the worn sweaters and caps of the regulars. He rose when I approached, extending a well-manicured hand. "Mr. Wallace, thank you for coming." We slid into a booth near the window. Dolores, the waitress, a motherly woman who had served me for years, poured 2 cups of coffee without being asked. "I witnessed the entire gift exchange on Father's Day," Bill began, cutting straight to the point. His voice was low, carrying the weight of years in business negotiation. Every word, every gesture. Your daughter handed you that lottery ticket and explicitly called it your Father's Day gift. No negotiation, no agreement about sharing winnings. It was a gift, pure and simple. I searched his face, expecting a trick. "You're Mitch's father. Why would you go against your own son?" Bill's laugh was brittle, humorless. "Because I raised him to have integrity, and he's forgotten everything I taught him. This lottery situation and the way he's enabling Valerie's lies has revealed a fundamental lack of character. It deeply disappoints me." He pulled out a heavy smartphone, scrolling through Facebook with practiced ease. "What they are doing is unconscionable. They are destroying your reputation with lies." He looked up. "My name carries weight in this community, Mr. Wallace. People know I don't lie about business matters, and this is a matter of legal ownership and ethical behavior." He began typing a lengthy post. I watched the process. Sharp, concise sentences, professional language, zero emotion. He was building a legal defense in the public square. As a witness to the Father's Day gathering at Stan Wallace's home, I feel compelled to address the current social media controversy. I personally observed Valerie Johnson purchase and present a lottery ticket to her father as a Father's Day gift. There was no negotiation, no agreement about sharing winnings, and no conditions attached to the gift. Mr. Wallace is the rightful owner of that ticket and any winnings it may have generated. The current social media campaign against him is based on false information, and I cannot remain silent while a good man's reputation is being destroyed by members of my own family. "You don't have to do this," I said again, the genuine shock in my voice making me feel suddenly vulnerable. "Yes, I do." His finger hovered over the post button. "My son has forgotten what it means to be a man of honor. Perhaps public embarrassment will remind him." He hit post. Instantly, his phone began buzzing. He turned the screen toward me. Comments were appearing almost immediately, mostly from people with tailored suit photos as their profile pictures, executives, lawyers, established community members. Bill Sutton doesn't mince words. If he says it's true, it's true. This changes everything. The digital tide, which had been crushing me, had just met a powerful breaker. "This changes everything," I breathed, watching the tide of public opinion shift in real time. Bill pocketed his phone. "The truth has a funny way of surfacing, Mr. Wallace. Sometimes it just needs the right person to speak it." Dolores brought the check. I reached for it, but Bill put a firm hand over mine. "My treat. Consider it a down payment on restoring integrity to this unfortunate situation." We shook hands outside the diner, his grip firm and reassuring. As he walked toward his expensive black sedan, I stood by my modest car, feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. I drove home and immediately called my lawyer, Sandra Ortiz. "I have a witness," I told her. "Bill Sutton, Mitch's father. He's corporate. He's powerful. He just posted a detailed defense of my ownership." Sandra whistled softly. "That's better than gold, Mr. Wallace. That shifts the focus from greedy old man to entitled gold diggers. We can move forward with the public claim immediately." The plan was set. The Lottery Commission had verified the ticket. I would present myself to the world as the rightful owner of the $120 million prize. I spent the rest of the day in a new state of readiness. My phone never stopped ringing. Reporters, lawyers, even people I hadn't spoken to in 2 decades. I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't need to talk. Bill Sutton was talking for me. I checked Valerie's social media. Her initial posts were still up, but the comments were turning venomous. People who had supported her were now questioning her integrity. They were quoting Bill's post. Valerie was fighting back, claiming Bill was lying to protect his own reputation, or that I had somehow pressured him. She was losing control of the narrative. I walked to the kitchen and looked at the crumpled, taped-up ticket. It was no longer a joke or a symbol of theft. It was a weapon. I locked it in the old safe bolted to the floor of my bedroom closet. That evening, I was sitting down to a quiet dinner of leftovers when the landline rang. I picked it up, expecting Sandra. "Mr. Wallace?" The voice was Janet Chen, the lottery official. "I'm calling to follow up on your verification. Everything is complete, and we'd like to invite you to our formal check presentation ceremony tomorrow morning." A ceremony. I thought about Valerie's public campaign, the humiliation, the lies, the public stage she had forced me onto. "We offer winners a choice between a private meeting and a public presentation," Janet continued. "Given the recent interest in your case, we thought you might prefer the transparency of a public ceremony." Transparency. Public stage. The words echoed my lawyer's assessment. This was my chance to answer Valerie's accusations in front of the world, with $120 million worth of leverage. "Yes," I said, feeling the adrenaline flood my system. "I want the public ceremony, 10 a.m. at your capital city headquarters." "Excellent, Mr. Wallace. There will be media present, so dress appropriately. And again, congratulations. This is going to change your life." I hung up the phone and walked to my closet, pulling out the navy suit I'd bought for my wife's funeral 8 years ago. I ironed a crisp white shirt, focusing on the sharp folds of the collar. I was going to face the world, and my daughter, with a quiet dignity she hadn't accounted for. I laid the suit out on my bed, ready for the morning. I felt like a boxer preparing for the final round. I had the ticket, I had the witness, and now I had the stage. I was ready to deliver my own message. I glanced at the small, dark safe where the ticket rested. I had no idea what kind of chaos Valerie and Mitch would try to cause tomorrow, but I knew I wouldn't let them steal the moment. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving that my value and my integrity was worth more than $13,000 and certainly more than a $2 joke. The Ohio Lottery Commission headquarters buzzed with activity. It felt less like a government office and more like a Hollywood set. Television crews adjusted lighting rigs, photographers tested their angles, and lottery officials scurried around with clipboards and official documents. I felt completely out of place in my navy suit, an actor who had wandered onto someone else's movie set. "Mr. Wallace." Janet Chen approached, smiling warmly. Ready to become a millionaire. The actual ceremony was formal and tightly controlled. I stood before a massive backdrop featuring the Ohio Lottery logo. An oversized check, too large for one person to hold, was wheeled into position. The flash of cameras was blinding. When Janet announced me as the winner of the $120 million jackpot, the applause felt surreal, muffled, and distant. "This is certainly unexpected," I said into the microphone, my voice surprisingly steady. "I plan to use this blessing responsibly, to help others, to pursue dreams I'd put aside, and to live with dignity." The questions from reporters came rapidly. How did it feel to win? What were my plans? Would I quit working? I answered with honesty, keeping my focus on gratitude and responsibility. Then, through the gap between a television camera and a reporter, I saw them. Valerie and Mitch pushed through the gathering crowd, their faces flushed with determination. Valerie was wearing the designer dress she reserved for high-stakes events. It probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. "Stop!" Valerie's voice was a shriek, cutting through the professional atmosphere like a knife. "That's my ticket. We had an agreement." Security personnel moved instantly, converging on her. But Valerie was beyond reason. her voice rising over their polite attempts to intervene. "Everyone here needs to know that ticket was mine. He's stealing from his own daughter." The cameras, which had been fixed on the ceremonial check, swiveled toward the commotion. This was the raw drama that television news lived for. "Ma'am, you need to step back from the ceremony area," a security guard said firmly. I looked directly at Valerie, feeling a sudden calm clarity. The panic I had felt in my kitchen was gone. I was standing in front of $120 million, and I had a clear purpose. A reporter lunged, thrusting a microphone toward me. "Mr. Wallace, can you comment on this family dispute?" "The ticket was a Father's Day gift from my daughter," I said clearly, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Mr. Bernard Sutton, who was present at the dinner, has already confirmed the circumstances of that gift in a public statement. That's all there is to it." The mention of Bernard Sutton's name, Mitch's own father, was an electrical current. Mitch, who had been trying to pull Valerie back, froze. Valerie's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The reporters immediately began shouting questions about the corporate executive, Bernard Sutton. The narrative shifted instantly from greedy old man to complex family betrayal. Valerie looked completely unmoored. Her own father-in-law had been used as a shield. Mitch stared at me, his composure shattering. His eyes held pure, cold hatred. "He's lying," Valerie finally screamed. "He's doing this to protect his son." "What do you plan to do with the money, Mr. Wallace?" another reporter asked, trying to steer back to the main story. I looked at Valerie, screaming and being restrained by security. I thought about the months of manipulation, the casual $13,000 theft, the years I had spent enabling her. "I plan to help others who deserve it," I said. "I want to start a business I've dreamed about for years, and I intend to live with the kind of integrity that makes a person worthy of good fortune." The ceremony concluded with a final round of handshakes and the official paperwork. The oversized check was replaced by a real bank deposit slip, the number so large it was impossible to comprehend. As I was being escorted out a side door, I glanced back. Valerie and Mitch were standing by their black SUV in the parking lot, arguing bitterly. Mitch's gestures were animated, his face red with fury. He was shouting at Valerie, not at me. The weight of their own greed had fractured their alliance. I got into my modest sedan, the official documents resting on the passenger seat. I started the engine and drove away, a quiet smile forming on my face. The next morning, I was at my kitchen table, reading about my lottery win in the Capital City Dispatch. The headline was neutral. "Local retiree claims $120 million Powerball prize amid family dispute." The article gave equal weight to Valerie's accusations and Bernard Sutton's damning counterstatement. The PR war was a draw. I was sipping my coffee when I heard a car door slam outside. Through my window, I saw Valerie walking up the driveway. Her demeanor was completely different from yesterday's aggressive confrontation. She moved slowly, almost hesitantly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She looked small. Instead of bursting through the door, she knocked softly, 3 gentle, almost apologetic taps. I opened the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, her designer clothes wrinkled. The mask of entitlement was gone, replaced by a practiced vulnerability. "Dad, could we talk, please?" she whispered. My paternal instincts, the ancient ingrained desire to protect my child, stirred despite everything. "Come in, Valerie." She followed me to the living room, perching on the edge of the couch like a frightened bird, her hands twisted in her lap. "I'm so sorry about yesterday," she began, the tears already welling up. "I was just overwhelmed and scared. I wasn't thinking clearly." She painted a picture of financial ruin, high mortgage payments, crushing credit card debt, Mitch's supposed investment firm failing. "We're about to lose our house," she said, her voice breaking. "We owe almost $400,000, and the bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. I was too embarrassed to ask for help before. You know how proud Mitch is. He'd die if he knew I was here begging my father for money." It was a performance, but the stakes were real. Their house was genuinely in jeopardy. The helplessness routine was a direct appeal to my protective core. "You've always been there for me before," she said, reaching across the space to touch my hand, a gesture of false intimacy. I just need help one more time, just enough to save our house and get back on our feet. I settled into my recliner, maintaining a careful distance. How much, Valerie? $2 million would solve everything, she said quickly, as if she'd rehearsed the number 1,000 times. It sounds like a lot, but it's nothing compared to what you won. You'd still have over $100 million left. The simplicity of the request was breathtaking. $2 million, a sum that represented 50 years of my working life. Valerie, I said gently, but my voice held no warmth. I've heard these promises before. Her face shifted, confusion flickering. What do you mean? You stole $13,000 from my account without asking. You publicly humiliated me on social media. You tried to take my lottery ticket by force. Now you want me to reward that behavior by giving you $2 million. She recoiled, the tears flowing faster, more desperate now. This is different. I was wrong before. I admit that. But we're talking about losing everything, Dad. Our house, our life, Leo's education. I stood up, crossing the room to the window. I looked at the neighborhood, the honest houses, the quiet streets. I had spent 40 years sacrificing my life to prevent her from feeling the pain of consequence. You need to learn to solve your own problems, Valerie. The mask of the helpless daughter finally ripped away. Her face was cold, calculating, and furious. You're really going to do this? She asked, her voice dangerously low. You're going to let your only daughter lose her house while you sit on $100 million? I love you, Valerie, I said, turning back to face her, but I won't enable your choices anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, the hatred in her eyes a physical force. She recognized that her manipulation toolkit had met its match. You've changed, she said, her voice thin with true disappointment. Money has made you cruel. No, Valerie, I corrected, meeting her gaze. Money has made me free. She didn't offer a final word, just a glare before she marched out. The roar of her SUV peeling out of my driveway was the sound of a final bridge collapsing into the abyss. I walked to the kitchen and began putting the coffee pot on, feeling the sadness, but also the deep, quiet relief of a man who had finally chosen himself. I knew this wasn't the end of the war, but it was the end of her power over me. I had chosen dignity, and that was something $120 million could never buy, ever. I walked to the kitchen and looked at the cold coffee I had brewed while Valerie was delivering her performance. I poured it down the drain. The silence in the house was profound, weighted not by grief, but by decision. I had finally cut the final wire, sacrificing my connection to my daughter to save my own dignity. The price of that freedom felt astronomical, yet necessary. I didn't hear from Valerie for 3 days. 3 quiet days of simple meals and the kind of peace that comes from knowing you've done the right thing, no matter how painful. I knew she and Mitch were strategizing, but they had lost their leverage. The public narrative was no longer solely theirs, and their financial crisis was now their problem to solve. I was stirring scrambled eggs in my cast iron skillet when the phone shattered the silence with its shrill demand for attention. Dad, what the hell did you do to my card? Valerie's voice exploded through the receiver before I could even say hello. It was declined at Nordstrom. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I set down my spatula carefully, my hand surprisingly steady. I removed your access after you stole $13,000 from my account. I didn't steal anything. Her voice pitched higher, frantic now. It was the familiar tone she'd used as a teenager when caught in a lie. That money was for family, for someone who actually contributes to this family. You didn't ask permission, Valerie. You just took it. Through the phone, I could hear the distant hum of mall traffic and the rustle of shopping bags. She was calling me from the parking lot of whatever expensive store had just humiliated her. I was standing there with an $800 handbag, Dad. $800, she shouted. The sales associate ran my card 3 times before telling me in front of everyone that it was declined. Other customers were staring. I looked like some kind of common person who can't afford her purchases. The way she said common person made my chest tighten. For her, being unable to afford an $800 handbag was a moral failing. My whole life was her definition of common. "I'm sorry you were embarrassed," I said quietly, "but that doesn't change what you did." "What I did," she laughed, a humorless, sharp sound. "What I did was treat Mitch with the respect he deserves, something you've never learned to do." I carried the phone to my kitchen table, settling into the same chair where I had discovered her theft days before. "Valerie, I raised you. I worked 60-hour weeks to put you through college. I thought that counted for something. And Mitch helped us move beyond all that," she snapped. "He's shown us what real success looks like, what it means to be generous, not sitting on piles of money like some kind of miser." The accusation hit like a physical blow. 40 years of careful saving, driving used cars, choosing generic brands, all so I could provide for her. And this was how she saw it: miserly. "You're going to regret this decision, Dad." Her voice dropped, cold and calculating. "You think you can humiliate me publicly and just walk away? You think there won't be consequences?" "Valerie, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm protecting myself." "No, you're being selfish and petty and cruel," she shot back, each word precise and deliberate. "But I won't let you get away with it. I have friends, Dad. People who matter in this community. People who understand what family loyalty actually means." The line went dead with a sharp click. I set the phone down and walked back to the stove, but the eggs were cold in the pan. That evening, I scrolled through channels trying to distract myself. A news program discussed economic policies that felt suddenly irrelevant to my small world. I avoided social media, avoiding the temptation to check on Valerie's life, but curiosity finally won. I opened Facebook, and there it was. Valerie's newest post, accompanied by a photo of her looking devastated, eyes red-rimmed with carefully applied tears. Having to write this breaks my heart, but I need support right now. My father has decided to cut off my access to what has always been our family money. After years of me being there for him, helping him through Mom's death, managing his affairs when he couldn't, he suddenly decided I'm not worthy of his trust. All because I bought Eric, who has been more of a father figure to our family than anyone, a gift with money that was sitting unused in an account. I never thought my own father could be so selfish and cruel. I'm honestly questioning everything I thought I knew about the man who raised me. The post had 47 likes and 23 comments. I scrolled through them, my stomach churning. "OMG, Valerie, I'm so sorry." Older people can become so paranoid about money. Your father should be grateful to have such a caring daughter. This is awful. Eric is such a wonderful man. He deserved that gift. Your dad is being ridiculous. Family money should benefit the whole family. Hang in there, honey. I closed the laptop. I was losing the battle for my reputation without even fighting. I walked to the kitchen and stared at the trash can 51. The $2 joke was long gone, the crumpled ticket a piece of garbage. But the $2 joke had revealed the truth about what I meant to my daughter. I had to reclaim the narrative, but first, I needed to protect the one thing she could still attack: my home. I called Sandra Ortiz first thing the next morning. "I need to make sure my assets are untouchable. My house, my accounts, everything." "Done," Sandra said immediately. "We'll put everything in a trust with you as the sole beneficiary, effective immediately. And we need to serve Valerie and Mitch with a cease and desist regarding the social media harassment." I signed the legal documents an hour later. It was a purely defensive move, but every signature was a wall going up between my quiet life and their greedy chaos. I knew the next move would be Mitch's. He would deploy his professional connections, seeking a way to destabilize me outside the court system. His threats always sounded corporate, cold, and calculated. I had to assume he was coming for my peace. I looked out the window at my driveway. I needed to move before Mitch found a new angle of attack. The legal paperwork, crisp and white, now formed a protective shield around me. My assets were safe. The social media campaign was still running, but the tide had definitively turned with Bill Sutton's testimony. Now, the comments were split between those supporting Valerie and those accusing her of being a cynical opportunist. The humiliation was shared, not mine alone. I was finishing lunch when my sister Brenda called again. Her voice was thin. "Stan, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mitch called me." I leaned back against the counter. What did he want? He was very professional, very concerned. He asked me how you were coping with the stress of the sudden wealth. He asked if you were mentally sound to manage a $120 million fortune. He was fishing, Stan. He was trying to get me to confirm you were breaking down. I felt a chill. Mitch wasn't just suing me. He was laying the groundwork for a formal guardianship challenge. They were going for an elder abuse claim in reverse, accusing me of being mentally unfit to manage the money, hoping the court would appoint a temporary conservator, someone like Mitch. What did you tell him, Brenda? I told him you were sharper than a new set of pistons. I told him he was wasting his time. But Stan, you need to be careful. They are going to use everything, your age, your grief, the theft, the win, to paint you as unstable. Thank you, Brenda, I said. I'm taking steps. The threat was clear. They had climbed the ladder from private, theft, to social humiliation, and were now hitting the financial legal rung with calculated precision. I had to respond with equal force. I called Sandra Ortiz and explained Mitch's tactics. We need to move first before they file for a conservatorship. We need to file a formal, detailed report on the financial fraud, the unauthorized $13,000 withdrawal. We need to frame them as the abusers. The action was simple. A detailed report filed with the local authorities and the bank's fraud division. The consequence was immediate. The bank agreed to review the unauthorized transaction, possibly recouping the $13,000 cruise money. That evening, I received a series of cryptic texts from Mitch. They weren't threats exactly, but calculated attempts to sow fear. Stan, I know a guy at the state bar, filing a motion for preliminary injunction on payout. Your funds are technically frozen until the court decides intent. Valerie and I are planning a press conference tomorrow about the theft of our life savings. We're bringing Leo. You don't need this fight. $2 million now saves you $200,000 in legal fees later. I blocked Mitch's number without responding. The air was thick with their calculated pressure. The next morning, however, the real escalation came from Valerie. She showed up at my house again, this time with her own vehicle, a modest rental, a visible cost, a sign of their true desperation. Dad, I got the cease and desist letter, she said, her voice tight without the practiced tears. But you need to understand something. Mitch is done. He's gone to his parents in New England. He's taking Leo. The mention of Leo, my grandson, hit me hard. He is forcing my hand, Dad. He said if I don't get the $2 million in the next 48 hours, he files for divorce, and he keeps Leo. He says I'm an unfit mother because I can't protect my son from poverty. This wasn't just emotional blackmail. It was a devastating double price. I had won the money, but I would lose my grandson. My paternal instinct screamed at me to write the check. I need the $2 million, Dad, not for me. For Leo. I'll sign whatever custody agreement you want. Just stop him from taking my son away. I looked at her, searching for a flicker of genuine maternal fear, but her eyes were still focused on the bottom line. It was all a transaction. You're telling me that a man who helped you buy your house, paid for Leo's private school, and covered your country club membership is willing to abandon you and take your son away unless I pay him $2 million? I asked, my voice calm. She swallowed hard. He's desperate, Dad. He's under investigation at his firm. He needs the money to disappear. Valerie, I'm calling your bluff. I stood up. I will not reward Mitch's blackmail. If he files for divorce, I will use every dollar of my $120 million to hire the best family lawyers in the state. I will make sure Leo is financially secure through a dedicated trust. I will not give Mitch 1 cent. Her face went white. This was a consequence she hadn't anticipated. My money, my immense leverage was being used not to save her, but to save Leo from Mitch. If you refuse to help your own daughter, she whispered, her voice laced with venom, then I will tell the court that you are suffering from a paranoid delusion, that you imagine I stole the $13,000. I will show them the viral posts, and the court will take the money away from both of us. The finality of her threat was terrifying. If she couldn't have the money, nobody could. Then you lose everything, Valerie. Your house, your money, and your son's financial future. And you will be the only one responsible for it. I walked her to the door and opened it. She stood there, defeated, her mask completely gone. "You've changed," she repeated, the line now carrying the meaning of "I can no longer control you." "No, Valerie, money has made me free." She left without another word. The truth was, my $120 million was tied up in legal and procedural red tape, but the threat was enough. I felt the sharp pain of the break, but also the clarity of a man who had finally chosen self-preservation. I immediately called Sandra Ortiz. "Mitch is threatening a custody fight. I want a $5 million trust fund set up for Leo, irrevocable, accessible only when he turns 25. I want Mitch to know that Leo is taken care of, whether he leaves or stays." My leverage was no longer just a defensive shield, it was an offensive tool. The public drama began to cost Mitch and Valerie more than they could afford. Mitch's professional standing, once his greatest shield, was being actively dismantled by his own father. The pressure from Bill Sutton's public statement and the looming fraud investigation began to crack their facade. 2 days after Valerie's desperate visit, Mitch made his move. He didn't call or text. He showed up at the auto garage I still visited, standing in the doorway like a black shadow, cutting off the sunlight. I was talking to my friend, the shop owner, about a new carburetor for a 1967 Mustang. Mitch's tailored jacket and expensive cologne were immediately out of place in the grease and oil-scented environment. "Stan," Mitch's voice was low and dangerous. "We need to talk, now." "You need to talk to my lawyer, Mitch," I replied, turning my back and wiping my hands on a rag. "This is not a legal conversation. This is a personal one. You're playing games with my life, with my son's life. Valerie told me you refused to help. You know we're losing the house. $400,000 debt is not a joke." "The joke was the $2 ticket, Mitch," I said, turning back slowly. "The real debt is the $13,000 you and Valerie stole from me to buy your cruise." Mitch stepped into the shop, his face tight with controlled rage. "You will not mention that. That was family money. I was there for Valerie when you were too busy smelling like motor oil." My friend, Tom Henderson, the shop owner, stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. "You need to leave, son. Stan's not talking to you." Mitch didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on me, his threat now clear and desperate. "You cut off my credit. You humiliated Valerie. And now you've poisoned my relationship with my own father. You owe us. You owe me." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a stack of documents. "I have documentation here. A formal claim to the court contesting the ownership of the ticket. I will freeze the entire $120 million payout, Stan. It will sit in escrow until both of us are dead. And I'll make sure everyone in this city knows how you ruined your daughter's life to save yourself $2 million you don't even need." He threw the papers onto the workbench, landing in a spray of oil. My 2 mechanics, younger men I had mentored, stopped working, their gaze fixed on Mitch. I looked at the documents. The escalation was now public legal. He was actively trying to freeze the winnings. "You're right, Mitch," I said, my voice calm, contrasting his manic energy. "I don't need the money, but I do need my dignity, and I need to teach Valerie the lesson she deserves. The only thing I'm going to do for you is give you this." I walked to the front of the shop and picked up the phone. I called Sandra Ortiz. "Mitch Johnson is in my shop, threatening me and trying to serve papers. I need you to file a motion for a temporary restraining order and a petition for harassment, effective immediately." I looked at Mitch. He stared at me, the blood draining from his face as he realized I had used his physical presence as leverage for my legal move. He had walked into the trap. "You won't get away with this," he shouted. He turned to leave, bumping into Tom Henderson on the way out. "The restraining order papers will be served tonight, Mitch," I called after him. "You have forfeited your last chance to remain civil." Mitch stormed out, tires squealing as he left the alley. The shop was quiet. I looked at the papers Mitch had thrown. They were real aggressive legal threats, but I had moved faster. Tom Henderson clapped me on the shoulder. "You handled that like a professional, Stan. We've got your back." I spent the next 2 days finalizing the transfer of all my assets into the trust. I also made a decision. I couldn't stay here. The neighborhood was poisoned, and the quiet life I desired was impossible where Valerie and Mitch could still find me, still make a scene at my local shop or my front door. I put my modest house up for sale. It was time for a fresh start, far away from Capital City. I called Brenda. I'm moving to Dayton, buying a garage, setting up a foundation. I need distance. Dayton? She asked. That's 3 hours away. Exactly, I said. The separation was painful, but necessary. I was choosing peace over proximity. The day my house sold, 2 documents arrived in the mail. The first was confirmation that the $5 million trust fund for Leo was finalized and legally irrevocable. The second was a foreclosure notice for Valerie and Mitch's house. Their debt was real. My refusal to give the $2 million had sealed their fate. I felt a pang of sadness for Valerie, the old version of her. But the woman she had become had earned this consequence. I had done what I could for Leo. Now I would focus on my own future. I was getting ready to leave my house, the moving truck idling in the driveway. I had blocked Valerie's number, Mitch's number, and most of their associates. I had finally achieved silence. I took one last walk through my empty kitchen. I had won the money. I had won the legal battle, but the war had cost me the relationship with my daughter. I was $120 million richer, and yet completely alone. I was ready for the quiet. 3 months later, I stood in the empty living room of my old house, holding my phone as movers loaded the last boxes. My house was sold, the final papers signed. I scrolled through my contacts, confirming Valerie's number was blocked. Some bridges once burned weren't meant to be rebuilt. The drive to Dayton took 2 hours through rolling countryside. I chose a quiet street, 3 hours from Capital City, far enough that unexpected visits would require real commitment. In this new city, I would be simply Stanley Wallace, new resident, not the lottery winner from the news. Henderson's classic auto restoration had been for sale for months. When I walked through the shop, inhaling the familiar scent of motor oil and polish, I knew I had found my purpose. "You sure you want this much work?" asked Tom Henderson, the previous owner, gesturing at the project cars filling his bays. "Most folks your age are thinking about slowing down." I ran my hand along the fender of a disassembled 1967 Mustang. "I'm just getting started." Within a week, Henderson's became Wood's Classic Auto Restoration. I hired 3 local mechanics and, remembering my own struggles after my wife's death, established the Supporting Single Fathers Foundation. I funded it entirely with the lottery winnings. Evenings in Dayton were peaceful. I could walk without whispered conversations following me. The local diner served coffee without gossip about my personal life. The shop became my sanctuary. Working alongside younger mechanics, I rediscovered the satisfaction of solving problems with my hands rather than my checkbook. We restored a 1955 Chevrolet to mint condition. The owner wept when he saw it, and I understood completely. This was real value. I thought about Valerie sometimes, but the sharp pain was gone. The money hadn't changed me. It had simply revealed what I'd always been underneath years of enabling. My phone rang occasionally with unknown numbers I suspected were her, but I let them go to voicemail. On Thursday evening, I locked up after completing a 1969 Camaro restoration. Driving home, I passed the community center where my foundation's plaque read, "Supporting strong families through tough times." I parked and looked up at the emerging stars. Somewhere, Valerie lived with her choices and their consequences. What I could control was building something meaningful. Every restored car, every foundation grant was a vote for a world where character mattered more than connections. The lottery ticket hung framed in my new office now. It wasn't a trophy, but a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as garbage, and the most necessary lessons come wrapped in pain. I had lost a daughter but gained my life back, and that freedom, paid for with the $120 million I had earned through quiet conviction, was a piece money could not touch. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.